Hi, I'm Rene Oswald with the Transitioning to Living Cuisine program, and today I'm going to be making kale chips. You've heard a lot about kale chips if you're into raw food. There's a lot of different people making kale chips, and I came out with one recently that I thought was delicious, but the problem is it's very addictive. Once you start eating these, you can't stop. They're so good. And I'm going to start off with showing you how to use your sunflower seeds for a little crunch in these chips. And you don't have to do this part, you can just make the chips, but I like the extra crunch. So I used soaked, sprouted, dehydrated sunflower seeds. And I talk about this in my book, Transitioning to Living Cuisine, how to make what I call a staple stash of all your nuts and seeds that you use frequently, so you don't have to soak and sprout and do all that every time before a recipe. It just makes your life lots easier. It saves you hours and hours in the kitchen. So here's my sunflower seeds that I soaked, sprouted, and dehydrated, so they're nice and crunchy. And I'm going to put them in the Vitamix. This is my favorite blender. It's a real high-powered blender, and this is the 5200 model. It's their latest model, and I just love my Vitamix. And I'll show you how you can turn these sunflower seeds into some crunch for your crackers, for your chips. Just pour them in your blender. That was about 1.5 cups. Put your lid on, and there's your sunflower crunch. And put that in a bowl. And you don't have to clean your container after you do this. Save yourself a step. You just remaining ingredients. And in this recipe I'm using kale, but you can use red chard or any, like collard leaves are real good. Anything that's real strong leaf, because you don't want anything that's going to wilt too much. And this kale is beautiful. This is lacinato kale. It's also called dinosaur kale. And a nice bunch of kale would be about 20 leaves. And sometimes you'll find a bunch that only has 10 or so leaves. In my recipe, I'm using 3 bunches of kale, and so about 60 large leaves of kale. And the only part of the kale that you won't use in this recipe is the spine, which is right here. And what you do to take the spine off is just hold your kale in half, grab your spine, and just pull it off. This is one way you can do this, or another way is to just take your kale, set it down on your cutting board so you see the spine, the back side of the spine. Take your knife and just slice right alongside the spine, just like that. It's another way. So whatever way is easier, more fun for you, do it that way. And then you just break the kale into hand-sized pieces. You don't want to make them too small because they do, when you dehydrate, they do shrink down. So you just break them into about the size of your hand for your kale. Now you're going to make a dressing that goes over your kale. You've got a large bowl, that's 3 heads of kale, 3 bunches of kale. For your salad dressing, you could make it out of oil. Most of the salad dressings I've seen for kale chips are made with olive oil. I wanted to make this a little healthier. I always try and increase nutrients in everything I make. So I'm putting in red pepper, large red pepper. You can put yellow, orange, any color of pepper, bell pepper, as long as it's not green. Green's the only one that you want to avoid because green peppers aren't ripe. But there's your red pepper. Put that in your Vitamix. Just cut it into about 1.5-inch pieces, and 2 stalks of celery, also cut into 1.5-inch pieces. And then add about 1/2 cup of sesame seeds. You can use tahini for this recipe, about 1/3 cup of tahini, but it's a lot less expensive to use sunflower seeds because they're only $1.99 a pound, and tahini is about anywhere between $7 and $12 a pound. So if you use sesame seeds, just make sure you soak them overnight before you use them, about 8 hours, and they're ready to use. These I use from my staple stash that I had already soaked and dehydrated, and then use about 1/3 cup of nutritional yeast flakes, and this adds a really cheesy flavor to the chips, really yummy. And it gives you some B vitamins too. About 1/4 cup of fresh lemon juice. And the spice I use for these chips is curry and cumin. You can use any spices you like, but this was one of my favorites, and I'm craving curry. So a tablespoon of curry and about a teaspoon of cumin. And that's it. That's everything. And I wanted to tell you too, a nice thing about your spines, save all your spines and use those in any veggie burgers or cracker recipe. You won't be wasting all these wonderful nutrients. You can use them. And now you mix all this together, and you want your batter for your chips to be pretty thick because it'll dry faster in the dehydrator. That was about maybe 45 seconds. You wouldn't even have to run it that long if you use tahini, because the tahini's already blended, but because I used the whole sesame seeds, I wanted to blend it a little longer so it would be nice and creamy. This part, you just pour your dressing over your kale. But you have to use your hands for this part. It's very important. Put all that love into your chips. And you have to massage your kale. Massage all that dressing into your, and if you're hungry, you can have some of this as a salad. And this is a great way to get lots of greens in your diet. These are great to take when you travel. They're real crispy and they're dry, so you don't have to refrigerate them. Teflex sheet on your dehydrator tray. Spread them out and they're ready to go into the dehydrator. Just make them a layer of kale on your sheet. And this recipe will fill a 9-tray dehydrator. So it makes a lot. So put those in your dehydrator for about 6 to 8 hours. Just try them, as you go and see when they're crispy enough. And if you want to, you can use your sunflower seeds that you ground, just sprinkle those on top. And that just gives it a little extra crunch. Hi everyone, thanks for your patience. That was about an 8-hour dehydrator. Delicious. And you can do this before you go to bed at night. They're ready in the morning, or you can put them in the dehydrator before you go to work, and then when you get home, they're waiting for you. They're so good. And what's wonderful about kale chips is that it's a great way to get lots of greens. You want to strive for about a ½ pound of greens a day for optimum nutrition, and a lot of times I found that people on the raw food diet, after a certain amount of time, they start saying they're not feeling as good, they don't have as much energy, they're kind of sluggish, tired during the day. And it's often because when I evaluate their diet, I find they're eating about 60% or more fat in their diet, with all the nut cheeses and the nut burgers and the pies. They don't realize how much of the nuts and seeds they're getting, and they're not getting the nutrient-dense foods in their diet, like the fruits and vegetables. So once they switch over and start eating more greens and fruits and vegetables, have more green smoothies, more things like kale chips, big salads, everything changes and they go back to getting the benefits of the raw food. So if you want more recipes like this, you can go to my book, the Transitioning to Living Cuisine book, and you can find that at www.reneoswald.com. And here's the book. There's over 350 recipes in this book, and it's written in levels. So you have level 1 through 7. You find the level that you're comfortable with, and you take it a step at a time so you're not overwhelmed with going into the raw food lifestyle. All the recipes for dehydrated foods are in level 4, and that's where you'll find about 40 more recipes like this in level 4. All the crackers and chips, and find lots of recipes you love and have fun with it. Enjoy yourself and have a great day. Thanks.